Okay. Can everyone hear me pretty well? Excellent. Well, as you've heard, this is going to be a presentation about the SCO versus IBM case and the implications of that. It's not really so much of a debate about the case, because I think we've all got pretty much the same opinion about it here. And there's not even really an argument that it's done SCO any good, I don't think. I think it's pretty obvious that it's backfired on them, and things aren't going to get better for SCO. They're going to get worse by the time the case is actually heard, because they're going to lose. But that doesn't mean that there isn't some point that they've got, in the sense that they've drawn attention to how open source development doesn't really take a lot of account, or maybe enough account, of intellectual property rights that might exist. And so if we're getting anything out of the SCO case, it's going to be just reaffirming the importance of looking at the legal issues and being aware of them, and trying to structure your open source development model in a way that fits within the law of intellectual property. So what I'm going to do firstly is I'm going to spend a bit of time running through the actual factual background of the case, and I know a lot of people here will already be familiar with that, so if you can just bear with me if you are a full bottle on that, because I'll just be running through that first. So after that, I'll then look at a bit of background on intellectual property law, and then I'll put the two together and say, look, what are the implications of the SCO case in the light of the law, and what can we do to improve the open source development processes to make sure that we don't fall into the same trap. So beginning with that history, I think actually we have started it about 30 seconds early, so no worries if you're still making your way in, that's fine. Beginning with a bit of history, okay, who are the players in this game? Well, the emergence of SCO as the great Satan in this saga has come as a bit of a surprise to some people, particularly because SCO, of course, used to be Caldera Linux systems, and now the greatest threat to the open source community that we've ever had has come from someone who used to be part of that community, a Linux developer. The way that happened was that the former Caldera systems purchased the Unix business of the original SCO, and SCO, of course, was a Unix vendor that had a Unix variant for the SME market called OpenServer, and it had one for a higher-end Unix called Unixware. And SCO, well, the new SCO purchased those from the old SCO, and it also purchased, more importantly, the intellectual property rights that went along with those operating systems. And those intellectual property rights are a package that can be traced back to AT&T, who was the original owner, or one of the original main developers of Unix years and years ago. What AT&T did was they sold that package of rights onto Novell, and then Novell sold it onto Caldera Systems, which became the new SCO group. So that is how SCO and AT&T fit in. IBM has got its own Unix variant called AIX, and that is why IBM has had to enter into license agreements with SCO, or originally with AT&T, because its AIX operating system is based on the original Unix sources, and so SCO has a couple of contracts that it has the benefit of that it can use against IBM, and that's what the case is really all about. So where are we in this case? Well, we're still at an early stage. The litigation only commenced on the 6th of March 2003 when SCO filed a complaint in the Utah State Court suing IBM originally for $1 billion, but then they said, oh, what the heck, let's make it $3 billion. And it's not going to be until more than 2 years later, on the 11th of April 2005, that we're actually going to have the trial. So in the meantime, of course, in between those two dates, there's a hell of a lot of uncertainty for the Linux community, and some people say that that's really what SCO is all about. They're really... For something of this size, yeah, it's not unusual. Even in Australia, it's not that unusual, but more so in America. But in the meantime, of course, there's this huge amount of uncertainty, and that is really possibly what SCO is wanting, because that gives them the opportunity to get their stock price up and to extract some license agreements from users and that sort of thing. If we are going to look into our crystal ball 2 years in the future, I don't think there can be too much doubt that SCO is going to eventually fail, and I think, for one thing, there's no real evidence that there is any Unix code that has made its way into Linux. The most that we've got is really a couple of PowerPoint slides that SCO's CEO, Dale McBride, presented at the SCO forum last year, and one of those PowerPoint slides didn't actually show any Unix System 5 code. It showed some pre-existing BSD code that later made its way into System 5 and into Linux. And then the other PowerPoint slide that he showed had some old pre-System 5 Unix code that, if it wasn't already public domain at that stage, or initially, it was public domain in 2002 because SCO actually published it on the web freely. So all that we've seen is a couple of slides that don't show any proprietary code of SCO's. And even if there is proprietary SCO code in Linux, there's a good argument that it's not proprietary anymore because SCO has been, as I've said, a participant in the open source community when it was Caldera Systems, and it was publishing this code on the, under the GPL, and the source code was available to download from its website. So the argument there is that even if there was any proprietary SCO code in the Linux kernel, it has itself put it onto the into the open source community. And its response to that argument is, well, that was a mistake, we didn't need to do that. And whether that's actually a legal defence or not is something that I guess the case will be looking into, but oops is not really a legal defence.